we do not expect the cat to receive a lot of energy in form of volatile fatty acids from fiber fermentation. But still, we know that even if they are carnivorous animals, the composition and the metabolism of the microbiome living in their intestine plays a huge role on their health, on their well-being. And so feeding them with some soluble fiber can still be very, very beneficial.
Hello, and welcome to the Pet Food Science Podcast, where our goal is to share new and emerging information to support the pet food industry to continually innovate to support the health and well-being of pets. It is my pleasure to welcome our guest today, Dr. Giacomo Biagi, who is an associate professor at the Department of Veterinary Medical Sciences at the University of Bologna in Italy. Welcome, Giacomo.
Hello. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a great pleasure being here.
I'm really looking forward to our conversation today regarding the application of fiber to obligate carnivore diets and all the considerations and why we should consider these for our most smallest companion animal, the cat. Maybe to get started, would you mind introducing yourself to the audience?
Again, thank you for inviting me. Name is Giacomo. I'm a veterinarian, actually a nutritionist. I teach at the university in Bologna, where I teach several courses, including the nutrition of dogs and cats. And at the department, we have I do the teaching regarding dog and cat nutrition. We run, obviously, research at our facilities. And we also have a consulting service about nutrition of dogs and cats for the owners, and also for pet food companies, actually, when they feel they need some support from a scientific point of view.
Excellent. Well,
I have 2 cats, 2 children. What else? A wife.
sorry, were those 2 cats and children, was that the same, that your 2 cats are your children, or 2 cats and 2 children?
I have 2 cats and 2 children. And a wife, in order of importance, yeah.
A longer, healthier lifespan for our pets. That is EW Nutrition's target. With immunoglobulins, that target is within reach. IGY are a young generation technology platform, an innovative solution that has been tried and tested over the last decades and can now yield tangible benefits. Immunoglobulins from egg yolk improve the animal's response to pathogens in the gut or in the mouth. They're easy to administer, they're perfectly safe, and they just work. Made with passion, proven with science.
Well, I think that's really appropriate because we're going to talk about these cats today. And coincidentally, I also have 2 cats, but I only have 1 child.
Okay.
So the cat children outnumber the human children in my household. So we have, as you know, have had a number of other guests that have talked about fiber. So we do have a really good foundation in terms of understanding the application of total dietary fiber and soluble and insoluble fiber as components of that on the gastrointestinal health of dogs and cats, but more so health focused only. So I thought today we can expand on that a little bit more because you do talk about that quite a bit as it in regards to cats. So maybe we should start with, what fiber sources do you consider when you're thinking about the inclusion of total dietary fiber in cat diets? And I would actually encourage you to talk about not only the healthy cat, but is there fibers that we want to consider in different comorbidities or diseases?
Sure. Okay. Now, first, obviously, when we start considering the opportunity to add fiber to a cat's diet, we still have to distinguish between the insoluble and the soluble fiber because they have very different effects. The insoluble fiber must be present in a cat diet because it is actually the non-digestible component of the diet that is going to stimulate intestinal peristalsis and allow progression of feces along the intestine so that intestinal constipation can be prevented. This is quite interesting because actually, if we think of cats in nature, they do not ingest much fiber at all, but they have other sources of non-digestible components of their diet that have the same effect. It is not plant-based, obviously, but it is part of their prey, like the hair or the feathers, even the chitin of big insects when cats eat them. These are all protein components of the prey that are non-digestible, not at all, and have the same effect. They stimulate intestinal peristalsis and prevent intestinal constipation. Obviously, at home, we cannot use, in general, we don't use hair or feathers or even, insects are becoming more popular now, but at present, we still need insoluble fiber um, to allow progression of feces along the intestine of our cats. Soluble fiber is a much different thing, actually, because soluble fiber is going to be fermented in the colon. Obviously, we are talking about carnivorous animals, strictly carnivorous animals, so the size of the colon is quite small. The cecum is almost absent in cats, but still they have their colon, they have a microbiome living there, and the microbiome is able to ferment fiber if fiber is highly fermentable, which is the case for soluble fiber. And in this case, you probably already went through the effect of soluble fiber fermentation in other animals, and these are more or less the same in cats. Obviously, one big difference is that we do not expect the cat to receive a lot of energy in form of volatile fatty acids from fiber fermentation, but still we know that even if they are carnivorous animals, the composition and the metabolism of the microbiome living in their intestine plays a huge role on their health, on their well-being. And so feeding them with some soluble fiber can still be very, very beneficial. But here we have a huge difference between the plant and the animal soluble fiber, because actually even uh, even from the body of their prey, the cats get something that could be similar to soluble fiber, which is non-digestible components, or let's say components that are only partially digested, but that can be later fermented by bacteria in the colon. But the big difference is that when we feed soluble fiber, plant fiber, we are feeding carbohydrates. On the other side, from the body of their prey, the cat receive mainly connective tissue, which means collagen. So uh, protein that is not highly digestible, but that can be to some extent fermented by bacteria. And the point is that the metabolites that you derive from carbohydrates fermentation are very different from the ones that you can get from protein fermentation. In general, we tend to assume that carbohydrate fermentation is beneficial because bacteria are going to produce volatile fatty acids. We know how important the butyric acid is for the colonocytes and let's say the intestinal wall of the large intestine in general. And on the other side, fermentation of protein is a little bit more complicated, actually, because we can get some molecules that have beneficial effects, like biogenic amines. To some extent, they are growth factors for different tissues. But in general, we tend to think that metabolites that derive from proteolytic activity of bacteria in the intestine are harmful. So they include a lot of toxins. The first one is obviously ammonia, but actually bacteria can produce a lot of those metabolites that we include in the so-called uremic toxins, which are not too bad in dogs and cats as long as they are healthy, but they can be part of the problem if dogs and cats develop kidney disease or liver disease, for example. So actually, I don't think that our colleagues, as a nutritionist working in the field of farm animals or herbivorous or animals, would ever talk about animal fiber. They would probably say it doesn't exist because fiber is from plants. But actually, if you are dealing with carnivorous animals, you have to take into account that something like an animal fiber actually exists.
That's it's really interesting. And I'd like to go down this animal fiber route a little bit more, and just a couple of questions regarding that. So, when I think about the pet food products that are on the market right now, there is only one animal fiber that I'm aware of that would be included in pet food, and that would be feather meal. Now, when we make extruded foods, we would grind that feather meal to a small particle size. Is that small particle size of the feather meal still allow the feather meal to have relatively poor digestibility? Because they also hydrolyze it, which improves the availability of those amino acids. So, what amount of feather meal would actually be a protein source or an amino acid source, maybe more appropriately, in contrast to a fiber source?
Well, actually, in general, I mean, as far as I know, the feather meal that is used for the production of pet food is hydrolyzed, and it is used for hypoallergenic pet food for animals suffering from food allergy or intolerance. And in that case, obviously, it has already been digested, so digestibility is not a matter of concern anymore. And in that case, I don't expect the feather meal to have any fiber-like effect, actually, in the large intestine.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm aware of anyone who has, I mean, it's not a highly, I'd have to go look at the ileal digestibility of that if it exists. I think it must exist. I believe that we used it in a paper for protein quality, so I'll have to go back and look at that. But what there's got to be a component that reaches the hindgut. Is in no Has anyone looked at the fermentability of that in essence small intestinal outflow?
I don't think so. I don't think so. Obviously, the fact that that it is a meal allows for a higher surface for bacteria to try to ferment and metabolize it, which may lead to little bit higher fermentation than usual. But it's still keratin, and so if it is not hydrolyzed, it is, I think, hardly digestible and fermentable.
Yeah.
Interestingly, it has been seen that chitin can have some effects on the intestinal microbiome and on the immune system, and in the immune system, but the two factors always go together more or less. And we now have some insects meal that can be used for pet food. They are, in general, they are obtained from larvae because there's less chitin and the protein is more digestible. But like adult crickets can be used in order to obtain a high protein meal, and it contains quite a significant amount of chitin. So it could be interesting to uh, learn more in deep which effect it can have on the whole intestinal ecosystem of our animals.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Very interested in bugs as well. So then I'm right with there's no true animal fiber in any pet foods.
I would say so. Yeah, there's no real animal fiber in pet food. It's not common actually.
Yeah, do you think, and I don't have an idea about this, but do you think that there is a potential benefit with the obligate carnivore about including animal fiber beyond plant fiber?
It's hard to say because there's really only little literature regarding this point. I'm aware of a study with cheetahs that was done, well, probably 20 years ago, where they saw that actually feeding only rabbit whole bodies actually had better effects on intestinal health than including some beef meat, so feeding rabbit carcasses together with beef meat. And this is was quite surprising, actually, because beef meat is obviously highly digestible, so you don't expect protein reaching the large intestine when you add some lean meat. On the other side, actually, the carcass, it contains bones and cartilage, a lot of connective tissue. I don't remember. I think it also contained the hair of the rabbits. So actually, they obtain exactly the opposite results that you would actually expect. And this is a good point to mention, actually, because a lot of information that we have regarding intestinal microbiome, the metabolites that are produced by microbiome, the bacterial population, which are the good ones, which are the bad ones. Most of our information derives actually from the human nutrition, but it doesn't really mean that what is the best composition of the intestinal microbiota in human beings is also the best one in our animals. So there's still, I think, a lot of. I mean, we have a very great colleagues working a lot on this topic. We have a collaboration with Jan Sukodolski. I'm sure he was already a guest of your podcast.
He's our newest host.
Okay, yeah. So he's the one when it comes to intestinal microbiome in dogs and cats, actually. And but there's still so much that we have to learn. All probiotics that we are feeding our animals are the ones that we know are good for people. We know that they are good also for our animals, but maybe there is more that we still have to learn regarding the effect of probiotics and prebiotics, actually, because everything that is fermented by bacteria can act as a prebiotic if it has a positive impact, so beneficial effects for the host.
I completely agree. I generally think that we're in the infancy of our
Yes, long way
understanding.
to go.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah, long way
And
to go.
then especially when you try to integrate not just gastrointestinal health, but whole body metabolism, it's really quite fascinating. So when we look at these fiber sources, Giacomo, and we are thinking about applying them to the cat in different stages of life. You mentioned right off the top the relatively smaller colon in the cat in contrast to the dog and then the human and then a lot of our agricultural animals, and the almost absent cecum. So they have much more limited fermentation.
Sure.
Given that, how much lower do you want to go with total dietary fiber when you're talking about cats at maintenance versus maybe cats with different disease states? And you already mentioned kidney disease and liver disease.
Okay, I don't think that anybody can actually say adult healthy cats need 1 or 2% or 3% of total dietary fiber in their diet, because actually nobody knows, actually. So they need enough fiber to avoid intestinal constipation. This is for sure. And I mean, 1, 2, or 3% of total dietary fiber may already be enough. Do they need soluble fiber to feed their microbiome if they are healthy? Actually, we don't know if they really can benefit from the addition of prebiotics to their diets, but we know for sure that there are specific diseases where they really need prebiotics to be added to their diet, like well, it's actually liver failure is actually more a problem in dogs than in cats, because dogs can develop portosystemic shunt much more frequently than cats, but actually liver cirrhosis can affect both dogs and cats. And if you have an animal suffering from liver cirrhosis, then you have an animal that is not able anymore to convert ammonia into urea. And the best way to reduce the production of ammonia by bacteria in the colon is to feed the animal prebiotics. Lactulose is the typical prebiotic disaccharide that is used in these situations. And it's actually quite simple. You are feeding the microbiome with carbohydrates so that bacteria stop using protein as a source of energy, and they produce ammonia when they ferment amino acids in order to get energy from them. So you want to give them energy in form of carbohydrates so that they are going to use the nitrogen molecules to synthesize their own protein and produce more bacterial cells. And by doing this, you are strongly reducing the amount of ammonia that is absorbed by the animal and are helping the animal in keeping ammonia at a physiological level, so avoiding hyperammonemia, hepatic encephalopathy, and all what can derive from higher ammonia. So cats in nature, they would probably never eat prebiotics, prebiotic fiber, but still they can benefit a lot of having prebiotic fiber in their diet under specific circumstances. And even in chronic kidney disease, we have just started to know that actually the intestinal microbiome may play an important role also in animals suffering from chronic kidney disease. And we have a lot of elderly cats suffering from, let's say, kidney insufficiency. And because bacteria, they, as well as the body of the animal, they also produce uremic toxins. And so by modulating the intestinal microbiome, we may be able to reduce those toxins that the sick kidneys are not able to excrete anymore, not efficiently as they did before. So different situations where actually the use of soluble fiber in cats may be very helpful, and it doesn't matter the fact that they would never eat prebiotics in nature. It can still be useful in domestic condition when they develop some specific diseases.
Right. So is that that's a concept commonly referred to as the nitrogen trap? Is
Right.
that correct?
Yes. Yeah. Right. It's the same. It's the same. Actually,
Yeah.
it's the same. It is very well known in farm animals in
Yeah.
order to reduce the environmental impact of our farms. Uh, we don't care about. I mean, I'm not concerned about the environmental impact of dogs and cats. At least not yet. But I know that in some specific diseases, it may still be very helpful and very important. And all these animals, they show signs of dysbiosis. And, and feeding them with prebiotics and probiotics should become part of the therapy, actually, for these diseases.
Right. So we've talked a lot about kind of what would happen with these fibers in the hind gut of the cat, in terms of fermentation. Do you care to provide any direction regarding the inclusion of insoluble fiber, not just to prevent constipation, but to reduce hairball formation?
Sure. But actually, also to reduce energy density of the diet. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, if you are producing a diet for obese cats, it makes sense to add more fiber, because by adding more fiber, especially insoluble fiber, you are providing some satiety,
Yep.
and even more important, you are reducing energy density. Again, a positive effect could be that you are helping removing hairball from the stomach and the intestine. And again, very interesting, there's a specific type of chronic enteropathies of both dogs and cats that can be responsive to the level of inclusion of fiber in the diet. It is not very often, but there are some both dogs and cats that suffer from a chronic enteropathy involving the colon. We call them fiber responsive, because actually feeding a therapeutic diet that is very high in insoluble fiber is in this case, it is enough to resolve the clinical picture in most cases. So very interesting. Again, something dogs and cats would never do in nature, eating
Right.
something that is very rich in fiber. Now, obviously, the only problem is palatability. So you have to the real goal for pet food companies is to, but they can do that, is to produce kibbles that may contain 20% total dietary fiber and are still palatable to dogs and cats. But with cats it's even more difficult. But so these kibbles are on the market and they work very good.
Interesting. Yeah. So if we were to kind of bring this together a little bit, looking at a small inclusion of soluble fiber and insoluble fiber for healthy cats is warranted for support. But if you have cats that have any type of liver, kidney, or gastrointestinal disease, you have to consider both soluble and insoluble fiber, and you have to monitor the patient to see the level of responsiveness that they'll have to that fiber. And then probably titrate it a little bit, depending.
Sure.
I always teach my students. I always mention the fact that it's not just uh, nutrient requirements that are variable in nature. It's also the responsiveness of the animal to different nutrients. So you might not know that you have a requirement, but you might see a benefit of the addition of a new ingredient, such as ingredients that provide dietary fiber. But you might be responsive at a completely different level than I'm going to be responsive. And that might be to a myriad of characteristics between the two of us.
It's time for our famous three. Corbion's Algaprine DHA-P3, the algae-based omega-3 DHA to boost brain, cognition, immune system, and well-being. Adding it to pet food is easier than ever. Cut out the middle fish and go straight to the natural source to enjoy all the benefits of omega-3 DHA. It's better for the planet with zero impact on the ocean and low carbon footprint, and it's easy to use. The highly concentrated biomass powder is suitable for multiple applications. Learn more at corbion.com.
I thought I would end with asking you a couple of funny fiber questions that I have that I don't have answers to.
Funny fiber question.
Yeah, and I even alliterated it with funny fiber. If you could speculate, why do cats go out into the backyard and chew on grass?
Because this is a typical question. Each owner is asking this, and I don't think we know for sure. I mean, sometimes it helps removing hairball from the stomach. Probably, in general, they vomit up what the grass that they ate.
Yeah.
So I don't expect that grass to have a strong effect on intestinal peristalsis, but it probably helps keeping the stomach clean from hairball. Sometimes, actually, when it is seen more in dogs than in cats, when they really eat a lot of grass, it's a sign of nausea. It's sometimes the first sign of nausea, so from some chronic stomach inflammation that the owners report. But actually, all dogs and cats love to eat a little bit of grass, especially in the spring when there's new, so fresh grass. We don't know exactly why they do this, but it is probably for the stomach. So my guess is that it is for the stomach. I don't think that anybody really knows why.
Right. My next question is, does that mean that when my cats go on a housefly killing binge, and I've watched them, they eat the flies. Dave Thomas from Massey University told me that in feral cats, they found a very high amount of biomass in trapped cats, biomass in their intestinal tract, also demonstrating that feral cats eat quite a bit of insects as well. Are insects prey? Are they eating insects for fiber? What do you think?
It is just their instinct, I think. It's really funny how cats never lose their hunting and, let's say, also killing instinct, even if it doesn't sound very, very good. They live in houses. They may not see an insect for years, but as soon as one insect gets into the house, they go hunting the insect and they eat it. you're right, they eat it, so they
Yeah.
like it, they eat it, and I think it's just their hunting instinct. Actually, the insect must have be the right size. Obviously, if they are too small, they are not attracted by the insect, by butterflies or grasshoppers. They are so it's always a big party when such an insect is able to come in the house for the cats, if they are not allowed to go outside, which is the case for most cats living in the cities, in big cities. Yeah.
We might have just inadvertently promoted the use of cats to reduce cockroach infestation in houses. So I just want to make sure that everyone knows that's not what we were promoting there. Just an interesting conversation about insects.
But it's fascinating how cats never lose this instinct.
Mm.
It's not the same because big cats, they have to get used to hunt prey again when if they were raised, let's say, in a zoo or something like that. So they have to be taught how to hunt again. Cats don't need it.
Yeah, it means quite a bit about them personally. I always wonder if that and their lack of trainability, whether we've truly domesticated them, or frankly, I think maybe the inverse could be true, that they've domesticated us. They've changed their voice to get, the pitch of their purr to get what they want from us. Very few of them train or work for us. They're pampered. It seems like someone's a little bit smarter than the human race, not really sometimes
Sure.
that much of a
Yeah,
challenge.
it is. Yeah, it is.
So last and but not least, I wanted just to ask you a couple of personal questions in terms of your approach, really as a mentor. And I would like to know from your point of view, if you were to give advice to people wanting to come in to veterinary nutrition as an example, what would your biggest piece of advice be to them?
Oh, you mean to pet owners?
To individuals who are interested in pursuing a career like yours.
Oh, I can really like. Okay, so like young veterinarians or at, I mean, it's in general, I have to deal with young veterinarians, so I don't not sure with other which other uh, professional figures can do this job in Canada or in the US. Actually, we also have people that have studied animal production and also biology that can start a career in the field of animal nutrition. Now, my first advice would be to obviously to keep learning after graduating. We have beautiful nutrition colleges both in Europe and in North America for veterinarians that are probably the best way in order to develop a strong scientific knowledge, evidence-based knowledge regarding dogs and cats, and I'm pretty sure that such a career can be very, I would say, rewarding from a professional point of view, and also not only from a professional point of view, but actually we really see very often that you almost always have to deal with the diet when a dog and a cat develop some disease, and so diet is very important. All colleagues now see how important the diet is, and so having colleagues that have developed a strong knowledge in the field of nutrition of dogs and cats is very important and very useful in veterinary hospitals. How to use therapeutic pet food really for that individual patient, and not just because they named the pet food renal or hepatic or obesity. How to uh, how to work on a pet food, just changing some characteristics if the pet food is not the ideal one for that patient, or even in some cases, why not, how to formulate a homemade tailored diet if there is no pet food on the market that really that is really the answer for that single patient. I think must start thinking that the diet is really part of the therapy, and exactly as you try to tailor therapy with drugs, you should do the same with the diet.
Absolutely. Let food be thy medicine.
Yeah,
Well, with that, thank you very much for sharing your advice.
you're welcome.
Thank you for having a conversation with me today.
It was a pleasure.
Of course, we didn't talk about Italian football, but also congratulations on your successes there. I know for Italians that ranks pretty high up in the things that you find value with.
We had a great season in Bologna with our football team. A great season, and we are not used to it, so we are still having parties about our to.
Well, to be fair, I'm from close to Toronto and was a Toronto Maple Leafs fan by the family I was born into. It's been forever. It's a losing battle as well. And so when the Toronto Maple Leafs do win on occasion, yes, there is a lot of excitement as well. So enjoy that. And once again, thank you very much, Giacomo.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Take care.
Goodbye. Goodbye. Take care.